Perfect. So, Namaskar everyone. Glad you could join in on a Saturday evening. Timing is perfect. इस पावन पर्व ये जो हफ्ता है ये बड़ा ही पावन हफ्ता होता है. This entire week is a very pious week. Celebrations are absolutely on. So much so that Dr. Alka Pande is at a place where you can possibly listen to some of the temple bells in the background. You may also be listening to some kirtan going on. She's at a very beautiful place. She is in the lap of Devi herself, which she will tell us in a while. We were waiting for this special occasion to happen because since New Year, when I first got this book, as soon as I read a couple of pages, I texted Dr. Alka Pande that this is the gift that we all can get from her. With her wide knowledge base that she has, her curiosity, she herself being a seeker, so much so that she keeps her engaged by learning something or the other every day that ways. Meeting her is always a delight, and I always feel privileged to interact with her on subjects that interest both of us, including arts, celebrations, cities of the country as well. And she doesn't need any introduction though, but I will still use the back cover, which is very beautifully designed for the book. She's one of the India's leading authors, art historians and curators. Some of her prominent books are Body Sutra, tracing the human form through art and imagination, Ardhanareshwar, The Androgyne, probing the gender within, the New Age Kama Sutra for women, and Shringara, the many faces of Indian beauty. She has many other books as well, which at this point of time, we are not able to count them all. She's currently the consultant art advisor and curator of the Visual Arts Gallery at the India Habitat Center in New Delhi. And to a lot of people who are based out of Delhi NCR, that's the Adda. Dr. Pande has received the Knight of the Order Arts and Letters by the French government, the Australia-India Council Special Award, and the L'Oreal Femina Woman of the Year in Design and Arts. I would now request Dr. Pande to bless us with the stories of Devi and take us into this journey, please.
Thank you, Mohit, for the wonderful introduction. And I would like to begin by saying Jai Mai. I'm here actually in Maihar, one of the Shakti Peethas of the Devi herself. And I'm really happy that it is at this time when I decided to go on a tirtha to one of the Shakti Peethas, and I've been here a couple of times before. I'm really happy that this was the time chosen. I think this is a blessing of the Devi herself, the eternal goddess, and it was really opportune that the city book leaders and Mohit, I'm deeply obliged and grateful to, that they gave me this wonderful opportunity of sharing my work. And more than that, I think for all of us who are tuned in today, this is in some way the blessings of the eternal goddess. Now, one of the things was that why the Shakti Peethas, why the ancient dwellings of the Devi? What was it which drove me to write this small little, it's actually like a little, it's like a Roman novel, and the only thing is that it doesn't have a continuous narrative like a storybook does, but it has 51 stories about the different Peethas of the Devi. When my publisher at Rupa Books, the wonderful Dibakar Ghosh, asked me after I did my Body Sutra, would I be interested in investigating the Devi Peethas? I jumped at the opportunity because I basically, personally, have grown up listening to the Chandi part, listening to the Mahalaya a day before the Navratri start on the radio at 4 a.m. in the morning. Because I come from a Shakt background. हमारे घर में हमारे पूर्वज तो पहले बलि भी चढ़ाते थे, But now, of course, it is all about, metaphors and symbols. It gave me also an opportunity, really, to investigate the, how should I say, the many stories, the symbolism, the itihas, the many myths. All these are different stories, Puranic myths, all associated with the Devi, whether it is the Devi Bhagavad Puran or the Durga Shapshati. We've all grown up listening to the many stories of the Durga. Durga stride the tiger, Durga killing the demons, demon Mahish. That's why she's known as Mahish Mardini. The stories of Kali with her tongue, bloody tongue hanging out. And my own doctoral work, which I did, which was on Ardha Nari Ishwara, where I also understood that how the eternal goddess is the great power, the great mother, the great nurturer, that Shiva without his Shakti is Shava. Now the Shaivites won't like it because these are the Vamacharis, or the people who believe in the power of the Devi, say that Shiva is kind of energized by the powerful goddess or the powerful power of the eternal goddess within him. And without the power of the goddess, he is a mere Shava. So there are many, many stories. And I do want to keep time to have conversations with many of you who have tuned in. So I will begin by raising myself a few questions which confronted me as I started my journey with the Devi, which was part of my own narrative as I was growing up. क्योंकि हमें घर में खाना ही नहीं मिलता था till we did not recite the verses to the goddess. So there are, whether it is Jayanti, Mangala, Kali, Bhadrakali, Kapalini, or it is Ya Bhuteshu, Sarva Devi. There's so many, how should I say, shlokas of the Devi, जिसको हम नमोस्तुते 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 ही करते रहते हैं. So I began by asking certain questions to myself. Who is the Devi? Is she Shakti? Is she a primordial goddess? Who is this daughter of Daksha Prajapati? Why does the Devi have 51 sacred dwellings, or is it 108? And what is the significance of these sacred spaces? This is really for people of faith, because the whole process of the devotion to the Devi, because if you look at the parampara or the tradition of what is Hinduism, we had 5 main sects, which were Vaishnavism, Shaivism, Shaktism, Saurya, and Ganapati. Beyond that, we had lots of subsects, and it is said, and I think it was Mark Twain who said that this is a country of 84 million gods, and each one of us can have our own relationship with either a male god or the eternal goddess. Now, I want to also just put down a few things in points before I start showing you the shrines and the different Peethas. I just want to give you a little bit of my own narrative and how I decided to write this book, which is an easy read, and it is a very personal book. It is not, I would put it like that. It is for people of faith. It is not a book based on archaeological or historical facts. It's a book based a lot on received wisdom, on the many stories that I've heard as I've grown up. Certain temples definitely are there as temple sites, but how many of them actually have dating written or inscriptions which can very clearly tell you in a rational, classified manner. So I'm talking of it in a very fluid space, but the space is that of a sacred geography. Now, when I talk of the cultural tradition of our land, of India, there are stories, there are myths, there are Puranic tales, which become part of the religious and cultural tradition of India. And mythology or mythos, which comes from the Greek word, is much nuanced word, which becomes the main component of this book. And within the Indian tradition, where we see there are a number of stories associated with the same temple. So you may hear one story, somebody else has another story. There is a meta narrative, there is a local narrative. So there are lots of things which center around the stories or the many stories of the Devi. When we think of Shakti or the Devi, the first thought and image that comes to the mind is the all-powerful Durga that I was talking about. We see M.F. Hussain, who created an image of Indira Gandhi sitting aside the tiger, where he said, Durga astride the tiger. Now, what we see with our goddess, the primordial goddess, Durga, is seated very comfortably on this very fearful animal, signaling to everyone that the might of the tiger is completely under her. She controls it. And yet another potent image, as I mentioned to you earlier, is that of Kali. Her tongue coated with fresh blood, naked, her hair unbound, standing on top of an inert primordial Shiva, wearing a garland of skulls that fall on her voluptuous breasts. The Devi Sahasranam is a living text, and a number of avatars or forms of Shakti have been transformed into more than 1,001 names. Originating from Sanskrit, the word Peetha actually means seat, altar, shrine, or dwelling. And in the case of the Shakti Peethas, it is also very, very specific. It is the sacred space where the Supreme Goddess takes a strong and well-founded seat on earth. Each of the Peethas have been turned into shrines for the goddess by the very people who believe in the absolute power of the feminine. Each site where the 51 body parts of Sati fell came to be known as the Shakti Peethas. A tirth, on the other hand, is a crossing. And as with most Sanskrit words, there are multiple meanings to this word too. Tirth is also the passing of the Atma to the Paramatma, the crossing from the physical world to the metaphysical world. And these 51 sacred sites are also linked by theologians and scholars to the 51 alphabets of the Sanskrit language. In each of the Peethas also resides a Kala Bhairav, which is another name of Shiva. Most of the Shakti Peeth shrines contain a naturally appearing stone, which becomes the object of worship around which the temple shrine is built. Now, when I went as a tirth to the Maihar Shakti Peeth, which I will tell you when I talk of the 19 Shakti Peeths that I will show you, I also went there as the final. One is the Nitya Puja that you do every day. The other is the other puja which you do on special occasions. And Tirth is the final, where you undertake this journey. And I see so many people. In fact, you can hear this noise in the background, probably, which I've tried hard to remove. But this whole town of Maihar, morning to night, there are bhajans and kirtans which are played all through the day. All what I want to say is that Maihar, the town itself, becomes literally Jagrat, I will say. It becomes energized with the power of the faith of the people more than the deity herself. It is the faith, it's the energy which the people bring into the city in buses, walking, in trains, everybody who's coming into Maihar. Now, normally it is said that the Shakti Peeths just have a piece of mountain or something which is symbolic of the part of the Devi. But in Maihar, there is a beautiful image. And what they normally say is when you are talking to the Devi, you kind of look into her eyes. And from the eyes comes a pouring of her energy. And here too, there are two lovely silver eyes in this black image of the Devi, which was apparently done by the Raja of Maihar himself, who created this temple. It is also the temple where the guru of Ravi Shankar, Ustad Alauddin Khan Sahib, used to walk up the Trikuta mountains every day. Then what I will just also say is that these, after you visit these Shakti Peeths, however many you can, basically the Shakti resides in each one of us. For the looking of my, or the writing of my book, I dipped into both the Puranic and the Shak texts to read the many interpretations and stories and myths associated with the iconography, the rituals of worship, devotion, and representation of the Shakti Peeths as sites of immense power and energy. Each devotee enters the site of the Peetha through his or her path of worship, through their respective understanding of the great goddess. The Vama Peethas, or the Shakti worshippers, for whom Shakti is the supreme embodiment of power, enter through the Tantric Peeths, which is a very, very sectarian movement as well. I am in fact closing on to one aspect of Shakti, which is the story of the myth of Sati, one of the 24 daughters of Daksha and his wife Prasuti, the daughter of Manu and Shatrupa. There is yet another story, because as I told you, there are many dhvanis to each Sanskrit word and stories. And as you are, Anantamurti said, they talk of suggested meanings. So what another meaning or another suggestion is that it is said that Daksha had another wife called Panchajani or Virini, and that Sati was their child. Who then was Daksha, the man who sired these 24 Shaktis? It is believed that Daksha himself was one of the 4 sons of Brahma and Aditi. We know of Brahma as part of the holy Indian Trinity, which consists of Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh, or Shiva. Brahma is known as the creator, Vishnu, the preserver, and Shiva, the destroyer. There are again stories as to the origin of Brahma himself. One of the Puranic stories or tales states that he was also Swayambhu, or the self-born. The creative aspect of Vishnu, he was Vagisa, the Lord of speech. As Vedanta, he was the creator of the 4 Vedas, one from each of his 4 mouths, and therefore he's also known as Chaturmukh Brahma. He is also synonymous with the Vedic god Prajapati and his consort Saraswati. Sati, who is also known as Dakshayayini, as the daughter of Daksha, was his youngest daughter, and this youngest daughter, who was very much the beloved of her father, married Shiva, who was intensely disliked by Daksha against his wishes. Daksha thought that Shiva was not palatable. He was an ascetic with an army of ghouls, dopers, and unkempt ruffians. And there are various stories of Daksha and the yagyas that he used to do. He did a Yajna-nash, which finds mention in a number of Purans like the Vayu Puran, the Skanda Puran, the Kurma Puran, the Harivamsh Puran, the Padma Puran, the Linga Puran, the Shiva Puran, including the Matsya Puran. Now, over a period of time, Brahma had declared Daksha to be the first amongst the patriarchs. Now, this really pumped up Daksha's ego, making him quite arrogant and haughty. Soon after his elevation, Daksh performed the Vajpayee sacrifice and then decided to perform the biggest of all, the Brihaspati Sava sacrifice, with all the glory and pomp that was required. And he naturally did not invite Shiva, whereas he invited many, many people. There were hectic preparations going on, and a massive number of invitations were being distributed. Sati came to know of this wonderful ceremony, got very excited, and made up her mind to be part of the event. As the preparations increased, Sati witnessed many celestial participants to the yajna. She was surprised that no invitation had been sent to her husband, Shiva. Not that this had any effect on Shiva, but when Sati insisted on going, Shiva was not pleased at all. In fact, he said you should never go uninvited for these, very important and significant events. But do you think Sati listened to him? She was also a strong woman who had a mind of her own, and she went uninvited to this yajna. On reaching the ceremony, Sati realized how her own father had deliberately omitted inviting her beloved husband, and in this way trying to demean him and insult him and humiliate him. But more than that, Sati herself felt demeaned and in absolute mortification jumped into the sacrificial fire. When Shiva came to know of Sati's self-immolation, he was beside himself with sorrow and rage. What he did, he plucked a hair out of his unkempt locks and took the form of Veerabhadra, which meant born out of the hair of Shiva. Placing Sati's body across his shoulder, he embarked on the dance of death, formerly known as the Tandava. So worried were the gods that Narayan himself had to intervene, and using his powerful weapon, the Sudarshan Chakra, he cut the body of Sati into numerous parts. He felt that till Shiva was carrying this body on his shoulders, he would carry on and the world would be destroyed. Some people believe that there were 108 parts, but I personally chose only 51 parts, which were for me a more acceptable figure. Over a period of time, they came to be known as the Kyavan Peethas, or the sacred spots where Sati's body parts fell. Once Sati's body was dismembered, Shiva calmed down, Shant, and went back to Mount Kailash. The story lays the ground for the emergence of the Shakti Peethas. What I see a lot in my readings is that the body becomes very, very important in the Indian tradition of not only philosophically, culturally, ritually. And we see that it is very special and is a nuanced concept in the Indian philosophical context. There are multiple meanings and layers in which it is enshrined. The Sharira, or the vessel, is the form which is the receptacle of the Atma. It becomes an instrument of the Atma. Thus, it is also transient and ephemeral. The body is also made up of the Panchabhutas, or the Panchatattvas, the 5 elements which are also associated with impurity. At a physical level, it is a form and a structure. The quest for the cosmic world begins from the Panchatattvas, which is Prithvi or earth, Jal or water, Agni or fire, Vayu or air, Akash or ether. In Indian mythology, the universe, in harmony with the five elements, is the ideal state of working. Collectively, these form the life force which later disintegrates to the celestial cause. These panchatattvas are aligned to our sensorial sensitivities: ears, skin, eyes, tongue, and nose, which aid the process of the five physical perceptions of this universe: sound, touch, sight, taste, and smell. As I conclude my thoughts, which went behind the narrative of writing the 51 Peethas, what I would like to share with all of you: what does the goddess Shakti define for me? She, for me, is the gentle life giver, as in the case of Lakshmi, Saraswati, or Parvati, or as the mistress of death in the form of Durga, Kali, and Chamunda. She's a fascinating juxtaposition, both life perpetuating and potently destructive. In her life-giving form, the Devi or Shakti can be represented as beautiful, benevolent, maternal, knowledgeable, compassionate, and even desirable at the best. Shakti invigorates, cheers, and brightens the entire universe. She is represented and described as an idealized woman who's imbued with beauty, virtue, and righteousness, and adorned with jewels. As Sitila Devi, Manasa, or Kali, the Devi is shown as haggard, ugly, unkempt, and emaciated. However, whatever may be her form, her manifestation, she's ever potent, ever powerful, and the greatest power, to whom even Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh bow down to. So let us look at the temples that I want to show you. Let me begin with the Sharada temple, the temple in Maihar, which is the town where I am, and this is where the temple which I went. This is a nice, quiet image. It's bustling right now. It's situated in the Trikuta hill, but I was lucky. I took the car up, the cable car up, in an unassuming white spire of a beautiful temple dedicated to Sharada Ma. She's known as Mai here. Devotees who come here to pay their respects to the goddess partake in a hefty trek. Some of them climb 1,063 steps to the hilltop, or people like me, we went on the ropeway for the well-earned darshan of the Devi. The town Maihar received its name from the pind of the Devi which fell upon its hallowed grounds, the name literally meaning Ma Kahar, Maihar, and for this is the spot where the Devi's necklace landed. Next is the Vrajeshwari Temple in Kangra. Now, this, if you can see, the architecture is very much that of the Himachal area. The houses are made like that, the temples are made like that with a flat roof so that the snow which falls on it slips down. And here, according to the epic Mahabharata, the Vrajeshwari Shakti Peeth was built by the Pandavas, who not only worshipped the Devi in her Durga aspect, but were also given the kingdom of Nagarkot by Dhritarashtra in an attempt of fairness. The legend says that one day the Pandavas each dreamt of the Devi, and in their dream she told them that she is situated in the Nagarkot village, and if they wanted to secure themselves, they should build a temple for her in Nagarkot to protect themselves from the destruction of their circumstances or destiny. Not long after the dream, the magnificent temple of the Devi was built in the Nagarkot village. The legend of the Devi is that after killing the demon Mahishasur in the battle, the Devi had been injured. To heal those injuries, the Devi applied healing butter in Nagarkot. To this day, the reverence of the Devi, her pindi is covered with butter, and the festival is celebrated for a week in this temple. I moved to another spot in Himachal. This is the Chintupuni Devi. And if you see, there is it's covered with the gold on the on top of it. And this is in the town of Una district in Himachal Pradesh. It is named after the goddess Chinnamastika, and it is here that one of the Devi's most prominent Shakti Peethas reside. Nestled within the Western Himalayan range in the north and the Shivalik on the east, on the border of the flourishing state of Punjab, one finds oneself in the idyllic hamlet of Chintupuni, literally meaning she who fulfills one's wishes. This Shakti Peeth is believed to be the place where a part of the Devi's foot fell, sliced by, of course, the Sudarshan Chakra. Next, I take you to the Gandaki Devi Temple in Muktinath, Nepal. It is said that here in Muktinath, the Devi's right cheek had fallen, and it is here that she is worshipped as Gandaki Chandi, or the one who overcomes all obstacles. Her Bhairav is called Chakrapani, or the one who holds the disc. The Gandaki river, which babbles close to the Muktinath temple, is considered as precious to the goddess Adi Shakti. The water is believed to have holy properties, and according to a local lore, the Shaligram stones or fossil stones which are found in the depths of the Gandaki river are considered to be a boon from the great goddess herself. Interestingly, the Shaligram stones are considered to be favored by Lord Vishnu and are also supposed to be an embodiment of his form. Now we move to Bangladesh, and here it is the Reshuri Devi Temple. This Shakti Peeth has been described as the goddess's lotus-like hands, and the Bhairav protecting her here is Chanda. Since this is the spot where the Devi's hand is placed, it is believed to be a place of immense spiritual power, for it is with her hand that the goddess bestows her gifts, and it is through the Abhay Mudra of her hand that she removes all fears and obstacles and darkness. There is a regular puja held here on Saturdays and Tuesdays in the temple, which is usually done in the midst of a local gathering of devotees from nearby villages and towns. I then take you to Assam. I'm moving in a very strange way. Now, this is a typical architecture of the state, of this temple in particular. This is a more tantric aspect of the Devi. And according to religious literature, the Kamakya Devi temple was built by Kamadev, the god of desire, who was eviscerated by the opening of Lord Shiva's third eye. And when he tried to help Devi Parvati win the favor of the great god of destruction. In his attempt to redeem himself with the help of Vishwakarma, the principal architect of the universe, Kamadev built this temple in honor of the Devi, and it was here that he once again regained his beauty and splendor. The original temple, as the legend goes, had a gigantic structure much bigger than the present complex. It was an architectural wonder of sculptural magnificence. And it is said that here, in this hallowed spot, the Devi's yoni fell, a fertile ground for worship of creation. I'm quickly moving from the northeast to the deep south. to the Kanyashram Rock Temple in Kanyakumari, Tamil Nadu. In the southern tip of India, on top of a hill surrounded by the sea, is the temple of Devi Kanyakshram, Kalika Ashram, or the Kanyakumari Shakti Peeth. The Devi is worshipped here as Sarvani, the literal meaning of the name being the wife of Shiva. Her Bhairav is Nimisha. This was the place where it is believed that the Devi's back fell, and while the island itself has changed over time, the original architecture and structure of the temple remains intact. The temple is dedicated to a form of the Devi, which is closer to the form of Durga amongst her many forms. I'm really enjoying this journey because I'm quickly hopping now to the Kotari temples or the Hingalaj in Pakistan. Now, this temple, as you can see, is inside a cave. It is the Hingalaj cave, the sanctum, and the Katori Devi idol is not one which is man-made. Rather, it is a small shapeless stone worshipped as Katori Devi. The stone is smeared with sindoor or vermilion. Pilgrims who come to worship come wearing traditional red banners of the Devi, as is done in many temples, wearing the distinctive red and gold scarves covering their heads. There are many legends and stories that surround the Hingalaj Mata temple. One of them explains how the place received the name. The story talks about two princes, Hingol and Sundar, who were from the Tatar Mongol clan, living sometime in the Treta Yuga. They spent their days tormenting people with their ambition and their thirst for strife. To free the people from the tyrants, Lord Ganesh, the Devi's younger son, killed Sundar, whose death drove Hingol mad with a thirst for vengeance. The terror among the people grew even greater, and it was before and in their desperation, they appealed to the Devi, the great goddess and divine mother, to put an end to their suffering. The Devi, unable to see her devotees in pain, descended onto the battlefield. After warring with Hingol, she lured and trapped him in a cave where she brought an end to his unrelenting ego and his life. In his last moments, with the clarity of one whose ego has been completely destroyed, Prince Hingol prayed to the Devi, requesting her to name the cave, the place which was bound to become a sanctified place for her worship after him, so that he may always be associated with her. Since then, the cave where the idol of Katori Devi is worshipped is called the Hingalaj Devi Temple. There are some lovely temples, as you know, in Karnataka. And here is the wonderful Chamundeshwari Devi Temple in Mysuru in Karnataka, or old days Mysore. On the outskirts of Mysuru in the state of Karnataka, in the very beautiful verdant Chamundi Hills, there is an increasing prominence to the place of worship and pilgrimage to Chamundeshwari Shakti Peetha. The iconography of Chamundi Hills draws as much from the Devi as the temple does from its hallowed location. The mountainous terrain resembles the form of the sleeping Devi, and the natural life that thrives in the hillscapes has some of the most beautiful rare herbs and flowers. It is this delicate ecosystem of the Chamundi temple which requires one to ensure that there isn't rampant industry because of the draws of spiritual tourism, for it is only too easy to trample the uniqueness of the place. The temple site itself is a Kruncha Peetham, one amongst the Mapeets of the Devi, as collated by the mystic scholar sage Adi Shankaracharya of either some people, there's a thing, 7th or the 9th century of the Common Era after, in his time. The Shakti Peeth Stotra, one of the most well-known works on the non-dualism of Advaita philosophy. Next, we move to the Kalighat Temple in Kolkata. At this holy ghat in the southern part of Kolkata, it is believed that the Devi's Mukha Khanda, or the Devi's head, fell, which makes it an Adipeeth. It is said that there are 18 Mahapeethas. This was amongst one of the 4 most significant sites of Devi worship. The temple of the Kalighat that we see today is a structure standing since 1809. It was built on the hallowed ground of the 16th century temple, which was a humble mud hut dedicated to the Devi. Here the Devi is worshipped as Dakshina Kali, a form of the Devi popular in this region of Bengal. The image of the goddess Kali, especially as Dakshina Kali, has its roots in the tantric worship as a fierce and frightening force of nature. She is more grotesque mother goddess and primordial energy. I want to go to this lovely temple called the Godavari Tir Temple, Rajamundry in Andhra Pradesh. She's also known as Uma Kotilingeshwara Swami Temple. The Devi's mythos at the Godavari Shakti Peeth is strongly attached to the river Godavari itself. And today I had gone to Chitrakoot as well. And what do I see there? The Gupta Godavari, which came and wanted to come and wash the feet of Sita herself. So, the space that I am in, it's a very sacred geography. And I'm so grateful that I'm here at this beautiful time of the Navratris and I'm roaming this sacred geography. I digress because I thought of the Gupta Godavari, which I just spent the morning walking through the waters of the Gupta Godavari. Now, one can trace the sites of pilgrimage along the banks of other sacred rivers. Godavari too has her historic sites of spiritual worship, one of which I just told you in Chitrakoot. These sacred tirths stand in line with Godavari's trajectory, and those that bathe in her waters attain spiritual enlightenment. Now, I did dip my feet a lot and I hope I do attain spiritual enlightenment, but all I can say is that I'm loving being a seeker. The sages worshipping on her banks are granted siddhis or spiritual accomplishments. Her waters bring fertility to the lands, and as the Vishwa Matrika, or the mother of the world, she provides sustenance and life. It is believed locally that Mahadev or Lord Shiva blessed the river with his constant presence as a companion and a consort. What a lovely story. Now I move to another temple in Andhra Pradesh, which is known as the Sri Sailam Malik Arjun Temple, a beautiful temple. And the Shakti Peeth Stotra by Adi Shankaracharya mentions Sri Sailam as one of the 18 principal Mahapeeths or the major Shakti Peeths. According to Shankaracharya, the Devi here is Brahmara Ambika. In the legend of Sati, this is the spot where the Devi's neck fell. She is also known as Mahalakshmi. The Sri Sailam Shakti Peeth Temple complex is in the town of Sri Sailam in the district of Kurnool, Andhra Pradesh. It is also known as the Brahma Arambha Malik Arjun Swami Varla Devasthanam. I then move to Odisha again. Sri Tara Tarini Temple, a lovely story. And look at the wonderful temple, a little akin to the Kamakya Temple. Now here, according to Adi Shankaracharya, the Shakti Peeth Stotra, the Tara Peeth is considered as an Adi Peeth, which means it is one of the 4 most important Shakti Peeths within the Shakta sect. According to the mythos, it is believed that this is the spot where the Devi's Thanakhanda or breasts fell, and the temple which stands on this modest hillock is named as Tara Tarini after its patrons, twin goddesses. Now, I come to the Kamaksha Amman temple in Kanchipuram, back to Tamil Nadu. But this temple structure is completely different, and you can see a lovely kund there. in the town of Kanchipuram, beside the river Pola, we have the Kamakya Amman Temple, which was built under the rule of the Pallav dynasty. This is the Shakti Peeth, where Shakti's backbone, or as some other people complain, her nabhi or midriff fell. This is why it is also called the Nabhisthanam Otayana Peetham. This is another one of the Mahapeethas that were listed under Shankaracharya's 18 holy sites for the Devi worship. According to folklore, Shankara himself consecrated the temple, and it was with the Pandyas who established the innermost sanctum or the Garbhagriha in the 14th century prior to the recent renovations. Now I move back to where I am in Madhya Pradesh, the Narmada Kund. In the text of the Tantra Chudamani, we are told that the Devi's hips were found at a site near the Narmada. This is the site of the Narmada Shakti Peeth. The Devi here is Shona or Sona, and her Bhairav is called Bhadrasen. The temple structure of Narmada Udgam is attributed to the rule of the Kalachuris from the 11th century. While temples decked with red flags dot the landscape of the Narmada Urgam, the goddess Narmada's intermittent sanctum is among a group of shrines in a kund or pond, which is made up of the waters from the Narmada. So you can see this lovely kund, which is made from the waters of Narmada. Now I'm going to the Barga Bhima Devi temple in East Midnapur, West Bengal. Now, here is where the Devi's anklets fell. And the goddess here is known as Barga Bhima or Bhima Rupa or Bhima Kali. Each of these aspects are closely related to the Devi Kali or Kapalini. And as such, the main idol worship is that of Kali, evoking her legendary stature as a warrior goddess going into battle with demons. She embodies the warrior soul as she wields her trident and khadga or sword, holding a severed head in her hands. Now I'm moving close by to Tripura. This is the Tripura Sundari temple in Udaipur, Tripura. In the town of Udaipur, in the state of Tripura, perched on top of a hill, is near the Kalyanasagar lake, is a temple devoted to the Tripura Sundari, who is worshipped here as Kali. The temple site precedes the lake by almost 100 years. The hillock, besides being the lake, is named Kuma or tortoise because the mounds resemble a tortoise. The site is a Shakti Peeth, and as legend has it, this is where the Devi's right foot fell. She's worshipped here beside her Bhairav, an aspect of her divine consort, Lord Shiva, as Tripuresh, the Lord of the three divisions or the three worlds. Then I come to the Kalika Mata temple in Pavagadh, in Gujarat, in India. The depiction of Kali in this Peetha has evolved from an ancient pre-agrarian deity to a feminine force of creation. As the mother goddess, she not only has the power to create, but to take back what she had created in a cycle of construction and destruction, maintaining an ever-shifting balance. She's also the terrifying demon-killing goddess, more ferocious than the benevolent Parvati and even the battle-ready Durga. The entire area around Pavagadh is populated by structures built over centuries by different ruling dynasties, making it an archaeological minefield. The ruins discovered in the area go back thousands of years to the Chalcolithic period between the stone and copper ages, adding a truly enriching and multifaceted history to the site. I'm going to end with this absolutely stunning temple in our neighboring country of Sri Lanka. This is called the Indirakshi Temple or the Nagapunchi Amman Temple in Pallavam in Sri Lanka. The Shakti Peeth in Naina Tivu Pallavam is a short distance from the ancient capital of Ceylon, Jaffna, in Nallur. The Devi was worshipped both by Lord Ram and the powerful Lanka king Ravan. Her idol was built by Indradev himself, who worshipped the divine goddess here. It is believed that this was the spot where another anklet of the Devi fell. And since this was where the Devi's anklet fell, some people say anklets fell, in addition to the other temple, the significance of the anklets in the worship of Shakti holds immense importance since time immemorial. The ornament has also been revered, and in the famous epic, the Tamilian poem about the Devi, the Chilpatikaram, the story begins and ends with this piece of jewelry. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience. And I'm so glad that in this in these beautiful 9 days of the different Devi worship, we are all singing and venerating the eternal goddess, the all-powerful Shakti, which resides in each one of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pande. I think there's no better way to celebrate these 9 days. And also, you just took us not only to the journey of India, but actual Bharat, which is beyond the boundaries of the present geographical boundaries we talk about, the political boundaries. And I think many at times people do ask, what's different between Bharat and India? That's exactly how we can define it. You have engulfed the story of this country in such a beautiful way with the story of Devis. I think this is an encyclopedia. And someone actually wrote on the chat as well that this book that you have packed in a small book is like amazing. It's like the smallest form of Bhagavad Gita. And we are always mesmerized to see such amazing works that you keep doing. So it's like the violin performance that happened at the Gurudev's place, and after the performance, it was only the violinist who clapped, no one else, including Gurudev. And so the performer asked, was it not good? So Rabindranath Tagore said, no, it was so mesmerizing that we all forgot to clap. I'm sure people are raising their hands now. I will now open it for GV Meenaji. She is joining us from Cochin. By the way, Dr. Alka, she was also a batchmate of our Sanskrit learning course. So that way you both share the same class. Of course, the batches were different.
Alka ji, it was like wonderful to listen to you. I just wanted to know, how long did it take you to, do this trip and, like all these places, and then to pen it down and put it in a book form?
Well, I must admit that this is really not, it wasn't done exactly this time. So many trips I have taken earlier, like, Chintupuni. It's over a journey of my life, really. Okay. There are Nena Devi, I went when I was young, Chintupuni, Kamakya I've been a couple of times. Maihar is my third visit. So there are some, like I haven't gone to Bangladesh, I haven't gone to the temple in Sri Lanka, I haven't seen the Hingalaj. So there are some I haven't seen, but I have seen a lot of the Shakti Peethas. It is all with the blessings of the Devi. Those which I haven't seen, I've done research, but it took me at least 2.5 years to put the material together and put the stories together. Because in my book, I've also tried to write about the different prasads which are given in different temples. Like in Kamakya, when you go, the main thing is the khichdi, as it is in the Kalighat temple. The khichdi becomes very, very important. Otherwise they say that the offering to the Devi in our pre-modern times was very simple. It was sweet, meat, and alcohol. But every area then gets its own regional food which gets in. So, all those things, gathering that, going to people, ringing up people, it took me time.
Okay. I just wanted to know. And I also shared with happiness when you mentioned about that Mahale Amma Mahalaya day, when you get up at 4 a.m. and listen to Bhirabhadra,
Yes.
chanting the
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, I've also heard it many, many times. So it brought back wonderful memories when I heard you mention it.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
Okay, so we have Monica ji. Please ask your question. It's open now.
Hi, lovely to see you all, and thanks for a gorgeous talk, Alka. Hi.
Thank you.
I'm really enjoying this reconnection with Indian culture and art. I'm always on a slight back to my roots journey, living here in Switzerland. So one thing I've really remembered from listening to you is this connection between creation and destruction that you mentioned.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to just thank you for a gorgeous talk, but also if you have anything more to say about that link, that connection. It's something that I notice in a lot of art it's very clear that it's either destructive or creative, but I don't know if you've come across any combination of those two forces in these, either in these temples or in other depictions of Devi.
So, the 9 days we are doing these prayers on Mahalaya Day when Devi comes down from her abode. This is all, of course, metaphorical. And she comes down on earth, and every night there is a different Devi which is worshipped. She's basically coming to fight the demon Mahishasura. So she is this gorgeous woman who is actually coming down to look at all, to keep balance and harmony on earth. And she fights the demon, and then she goes back. And in fact, it's a beautiful thing that she is put back in the waters. She's made of clay. So the whole thing of transience and intransience, of permanence and impermanence, which is there. And in the same way, it is the good, the bad, the ugly. These are also all very fluid things. And part of human nature, that's the way we are all built. That what is basically, when we look at Dharma, what is Dharma really? And the Devi is an embodiment of Dharma. So the creation and the destruction, the whole thing of the humans created in this body, which is a receptacle of the Paramatma within us, the Atma and the Paramatma. So what happens is that it also just shows that there is an impermanence, and the Devi becomes a site of permanence and impermanence. And also she is the holder of both. She's as a matrika, as a saptamatrika, in the form of the 7 mothers. She is the mother, the nurturing mother, the difficult mother, the strong mother, all the forms that we in our lives as humans also take. As mothers, aren't we sometimes really, I won't say we are destructive, but we do, like they say, spare the rod and spoil the child. We are also fearsome. We are also all giving. Every time we give birth, a woman gives birth to a child, they say that she is reborn again. So these are all very symbolic things. And as you rightly also observed, that, the connection with the rituals, they all have a metaphorical, very symbolic. I mean, India is all about symbolism. So this is how it is. Does that answer your question to some extent?
Yeah, that's good to hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica, and lovely to see you.
Possibly leaving everyone more curious to know more about it. So, Dr. Pande, you may get many more requests to be on the platform again, many more lectures.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Now we have Nilima Bhatt, with Shakti leadership. Dr. Pande, we have Nilima Bhatt for you.
Thank you, Alka ji. Just totally fascinated. Just so beautiful to be doing this in Navratri, as you say. I just completed a peace pilgrimage to Kashmir and Ladakh. And I was looking for, is there any Shakti Peeth in Ladakh? And lo and behold, the internet said, yes, there is one near Leh. And the goddess is Sundari. And the Bhairav is Sundareshwar. So I was so excited. And we took the group and we went looking for it. And then the locals said to us, the only Shakti Peeth we have is the Kali Mata temple next to Spituk Monastery. And so we ended up going there, and we went into the temple. It was a full moon of August, and lots of, it was essentially a Buddhist monastery, but it had this one little room with incredible statues of the Tibetan Buddhist iconography. And I was curious to ask you, did we go to the wrong place? Have you heard about which is the one in Ladakh that is the Shakti Peeth?
So I'm not too sure about Ladakh in my study of the Shakti Peeths, but as I told you, there are a lot of local stories because Shakti, in fact, she lives what is believed more so in our received wisdom is that the Devi lives in the mountains. So you'll see most of the Shakti Peeths are on top of the mountains. And I'm sure probably because this is, again, as I keep saying, this is all about faith. So if there is, she could be the local Grama Devi of that place. And they have to be, and if she's a Grama Devata or a Shakti Peeth, it could turn into a Shakti Peeth also. As I told you, it's also the devotees who make the Peetha, you know. So it becomes as a mode of ritual of offering and of fording and crossing. So it could be the local Grama Dev, which is their local Shakti Peeth. Very much so, it could be. But it's not listed in the formal kind of, as I said, I've only chosen 51, but there are many people who believe in 108, that there are 108 Peethas. So it could be one of those.
And in the 51, you did not come across anyone in the dark?
No, not for me.
The one that you mentioned is from J&K, which is Mahamaya.
Yes.
Also, one that you have not mentioned, and I, for the first time when I came across, was the Mata Tanotray. That was the Jaisalmer, which was actually in the border movie. And so much so that it's actually part of the war stories. Every time we talk about the Pakistan war, we speak about the Mata Tanotray. And in the border movie, definitely it was idolized. It was given a new shape and a story. And so I'm sure there may be many. And that's what leaves us with this craving to search many of those possibly 108 minus 51 to us and to explore. And I'm sure, Nilimaji, people like you, the curious people who take people on a very different pilgrimage. By the way, I would recommend everyone to listen to Nilimaji's talk that she recently gave at Rashtam. It was a very fascinating podcast. Raghav actually sent it to me. Dr. Sampath also mentioned. So it's truly a privilege to have everyone here today. We couldn't realize it's already 6:07. Usually we follow the ritual. क्योंकि अब माता की बात हो रही है तो हम जो rules हैं उनको भी follow करेंगे. It's 6:07 now, and we will have to say a goodbye to everyone. Dhanyawad and namaskar to everyone. But many thanks for this blessing, Dr. Pande. These Navratras, I think this is one of the best prasad that we can get. So thank you very much. It's truly a privilege, a pleasure, and thanks to everyone who could join in and tune in and had a great time being with all of you.
I'll just say Jai Mai.
Jai Mai.